Chapter 24 of Camille. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Camille by Alexandre Dumas Fils. Translated by Edmund Goss. Chapter 24. It was something already, but it was not enough. I saw the hold which I had upon this woman, and I took a cowardly advantage of it. When I think that she is dead now, I ask myself if God will ever forgive me for the wrong I did her. After the supper, which was noisy as could be, there was gambling. I sat by the side of Olympe, and put down my money so recklessly that she could not but notice me. In an instant I had gained 150 or 200 louis, which I spread out before me on the table, and on which she fastened her eyes greedily. I was the only one not completely absorbed by the game, and able to pay her some attention. All the rest of the night I gained, and it was I who gave her money to play, for she had lost all she had before her, and probably all she had in the house. At 5 in the morning the guests departed. I had gained 300 louis. All the players were already on their way downstairs. I was the only one who had remained behind, and as I did not know any of them, no one noticed it. Olympe herself was lighting the way, and I was going to follow the others, when, turning back, I said to her, "I must speak to you." "Tomorrow," she said. "No, now." "What have you to say?" "You will see." And I went back into the room. "You have lost," I said. "Yes." "All that you had in the house?" She hesitated. "Be frank." "Well, it is true." "I have won 300 louis. Here they are, if you will let me stay here tonight." And I threw the gold on the table. "And why this proposition?" "Because I am in love with you, of course." "No, but because you love Marguerite, and you want to have your revenge upon her by becoming my lover. You don't deceive a woman like me, my dear friend. Unluckily, I am still too young and too good looking to accept the part that you offer me." "So you refuse?" "Yes." "Would you rather take me for nothing? It is I who wouldn't accept then. Think it over, my dear Olympe. If I had sent some one to offer you these 300 louis on my behalf, on the conditions I attached to them, you'd have accepted. I prefer to speak to you myself. Accept without inquiring into my reasons. Say to yourself that you are beautiful, and that there is nothing surprising in my being in love with you." Marguerite was a woman in the same position as Olympe, and yet I should never have dared say to her the first time I met her what I had said to the other woman. I loved Marguerite. I saw in her instincts which were lacking in the other, and at the very moment in which I made my bargain, I felt a disgust toward the woman with whom I was making it. She accepted, of course, in the end, and at midday I left her house as her lover. But I quitted her without a recollection of the caresses and of the words of love which she had felt bound to shower upon me in return for the 6,000 francs which I left with her. And yet there were men who had ruined themselves for that woman. From that day I inflicted on Marguerite a continual persecution. Olympe and she gave up seeing one another, as you might imagine. I gave my new mistress a carriage and jewels. I gambled, I committed every extravagance which could be expected of a man in love with such a woman as Olympe. The report of my new infatuation was immediately spread abroad. Prudence herself was taken in, and finally thought that I had completely forgotten Marguerite. Marguerite herself, whether she guessed my motive, or was deceived like everybody else, preserved a perfect dignity in response to the insults which I heaped upon her daily. Only she seemed to suffer, for whenever I met her she was more and more pale, more and more sad. My love for her, carried to the point at which it was transformed into hatred, rejoiced at the sight of her daily sorrow. Often, when my cruelty towards her became infamous, Marguerite lifted upon me such appealing eyes that I blushed for the part I was playing, and was ready to implore her forgiveness. But my repentance was of only a moment's duration, and Olympe, who had finally put aside all self-respect, and discovered that by annoying Marguerite she could get from me whatever she wanted, constantly stirred up my resentment against her, and insulted her whenever she found an opportunity, with the cowardly persistence of a woman licensed by the authority of a man. At last Marguerite gave up going to balls or theatres for fear of meeting Olympe and me. Then direct impertinences gave way to anonymous letters, and there was not a shameful thing which I did not encourage my mistress to relate, and which I did not myself relate in reference to Marguerite. To reach such a point I must have been literally mad. I was like a man drunk upon bad wine, who falls into one of those nervous exaltations in which the hand is capable of committing a crime without the head knowing anything about it. In the midst of it all I endured a martyrdom. The not disdainful calm, the not contemptuous dignity with which Marguerite responded to all my attacks, and which raised her above me in my own eyes, enraged me still more against her. One evening Olympe had gone somewhere or other, and had met Marguerite, who for once had not spared the foolish creature, so that she had had to retire in confusion. Olympe returned in a fury, and Marguerite fainted and had to be carried out. Olympe related to me what had happened, declared that Marguerite, seeing her alone, had revenged herself upon her because she was my mistress, and that I must write and tell her to respect the woman whom I loved, whether I was present or absent. I need not tell you that I consented, and that I put into the letter which I sent to her addressed the same day, everything bitter, shameful, and cruel that I could think of. This time the blow was more than the unhappy creature could endure without replying. I felt sure that an answer would come, and I resolved not to go out all day. About 2 there was a ring, and Prudence entered. I tried to assume an indifferent air as I asked her what had brought her; but that day Madame Duvernoy was not in a laughing humour, and in a really moved voice she said to me that since my return, that is to say for about 3 weeks, I had left no occasion untried which could give pain to Marguerite, that she was completely upset by it, and that the scene of last night and my angry letter of the morning had forced her to take to her bed. In short, without making any reproach, Marguerite sent to ask me for a little pity, since she had no longer the moral or physical strength to endure what I was making her suffer. That Mademoiselle Gautier, I said to Prudence, should turn me out of her own house is quite reasonable, but that she should insult the woman whom I love, under the pretence that this woman is my mistress, is a thing I will never permit. My friend, said Prudence, you are under the influence of a woman who has neither heart nor sense. You are in love with her, it is true, but that is not a reason for torturing a woman who cannot defend herself. Let Mademoiselle Gautier send me her Comte de N, and the sides will be equal. You know very well that she will not do that. So, my dear Armand, leave her alone. If you saw her you would be ashamed of the way in which you are treating her. She is white, she coughs, she won't last long now. And Prudence held out her hand to me, adding, come and see her. It will make her very happy. I have no desire to meet Madame de N. Madame de N is never there. She cannot endure him. If Marguerite wishes to see me, she knows where I live. Let her come to see me. But, for my part, I will never put foot in the Rue d'Antin. Will you receive her well? Certainly. Well, I am sure that she will come. Let her come. Shall you be out to-day? I shall be at home all the evening. I will tell her. And Prudence left me. I did not even write to tell Olympe not to expect me. I never troubled much about her, scarcely going to see her one night a week. She consoled herself, I believe, with an actor from some theatre or other. I went out for dinner and came back almost immediately.